Hey guys, and welcome to a Cloud Developer channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create a new AngularJS application using Visual Studio Code. And we're going to use nodejs to actually install and configure a new AngularJS application. So the first thing that we want to do is actually go ahead and download something that's called Node Version Manager for Windows, since I'm using Windows here. And what this is going to be used for is the installation of the node versions and management of different node versions that you can have installed on your machine for development purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and search for Node Version Manager Windows. And in here, it's going to show you a GitHub project by Corey Butler. And this is a port of the Node Version Manager that typically only runs on Linux, but he's gone ahead and actually ported it to Windows using a programming language called Go. So once you get to this GitHub repository, you can go ahead and download it by clicking on this Releases tab here. And the current version is 1.1.5. And I'll go ahead and download the NVM setup zip file. And go ahead and open it up. And inside of that there's a NVM setup package. So I'll go ahead and double click this and install this on my machine. And notice the path that it's actually installing into is the username for your user that you're logged into and the app data folder. So it doesn't actually install it into the normal, space where the programs get installed, such as program files, and you will also not see it in your program and features part of Windows. So if you try to right-click and go to Programs and Features, you will actually not be able to see it to be able to uninstall it. So if I go ahead and click Next and Install, this is going to go ahead and set that up for me. And click Finish, and we're done installing Node Version Manager. So the next step that we want to take is we'll go ahead and open up PowerShell, and to be able to check to see if everything has been set up correctly with Node Version Manager, you'll just type in nvm and then version, and it will tell you the version number. So now if you actually just do nvm, it will give you a few different helpful commands that you can run. And the first one you'll notice is there's the nvm install, and then it asks for a version number. Now basically this allows you to actually install different versions of Node on your computer, and the way that you can actually get a list of the version numbers, if you just go to nodejs, and in here you'll see that the current version is 6.11.0 for the long-term support version. And there's different versions that you can actually download here as well. So if you can actually take a look here. There's different releases that have been mentioned and their schedule for support. So in this case, I'm going to be using the latest version, which is going to be 6.11.0. And I'll go back to PowerShell. And then here I'll just type in nvm install 6.11.0. And it goes ahead and actually downloads it and installs it on the machine. Now, in order to use Node or to be able to check the version number of Node, you should be able to do npm --version. Now you'll notice that we get an error saying that the command is not recognized. The reason for that is because you actually have to tell your operating system, specifically the environment that you're running in, which version of Node you want to actually run. Because right now Windows doesn't know anything about Node since it was installed through a Node Version Manager. So to do this, what you can do is actually do nvm list, and it will actually give you all the versions that are available through the Node Version Manager. So now that we know we have 6.11.0 installed, let's go ahead and actually set it as the current version we want to be able to use. So we'll go ahead and do nvm use 6.11.0, and it's going to prompt us, and we're going to go ahead and say yes. And now it's set it to the version that we just asked. So let's take a look to see if we can actually run the version command. And in here, as you can see, the version number actually came back as a slightly different version of npm. Now, it is actually fully installed, and it is using the current version of 6.11.0. So since everything seems to be working, okay, the next step we want to take is actually to go ahead and install Angular. So the easiest way to actually know exactly what commands to run, if you actually go to angularjs.io website, and the first thing you'll notice is there's a get started link. So go ahead and click on that, and it will actually show you how do you get started with installation of Angular. Specifically, this is actually going to be installing the Angular CLI tool on your machine, and this tool can be used for many things. One of those is actually the creation of a new Angular application project. So we'll go ahead and grab this command here. That basically what this does is actually runs Node Package Manager and installs globally the Angular CLI command itself. So let's go back here and paste that in here and press enter. And this is going to go ahead and reach out to the Node repository and start downloading all of the components needed in order to support the Angular CLI. Okay, so everything got installed, and what we should be able to do now is actually type in a command called ng, and let's see if we run the help command, what kind of output are we going to see. So as you can see now, ng actually is a command that's actually recognized, and you can use this command to do a lot of different things. So if you actually go all the way to the top, you'll see that there are commands for ng completion. Basically, it gives you some basic information about how do you actually build an app, how do you target particular environments and things related to your AngularJS application. So now that we actually have this in place, let's go ahead and go to a folder where we're going to go ahead and create our application. So I'm going to navigate to my D drive projects folder, and I'll go to the node folder here. So in here I have a sample application that I was actually learning about AngularJS, and you can actually find it on this website as well. If you go to the tutorial, there's a full tutorial of how to actually build an application using AngularJS, using all these commands, and it walks you through the basics of the different parts of AngularJS framework itself. So I've already gone through that tutorial, and I'm also learning about AngularJS myself. So as I go and build out this website, you can come along with me and learn different things and different ways you can actually build AngularJS applications. So now that I actually have my Angular environment set up, I can go ahead and create a new application, and you do that by typing in ng new and giving it the actual name of the application you want to use. Now, in this case, I'm actually going to be building out my clouddeveloper.io website, so I'll just go ahead and type in Cloud Developer. Now, one thing that I've learned is that if you actually put in a dot and something else at the end, so in this case, if I would have typed in clouddeveloper.io, I actually ran into some issues with running some tests within the application itself that are set up through the framework. The reason for that is because Angular and all of the tooling around Angular actually uses naming conventions for doing certain things. So as soon as it saw .io in the name, it actually ended up failing because it was trying to assume it was a particular type of a component, but it's actually just the name of my folder. So that's something I'm going to be learning about myself to see how I can get around that issue. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and set up a new application, and that's just going to be called Cloud Developer. And I'll just change the name of that application inside of the actual code instead of the folder. So I'll go ahead and press enter, and I'll let this go ahead and download all the relevant packages and set up all of the basic file structure and folder structure that we're going to go over in a moment. Okay, so the application template got created, so we should be able to actually list it here, and we'll go ahead and navigate to that folder. And if you take a look at the files that are set up here, you can see that there's a bunch of different files. So let's go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code, and I'm using Code Insider Edition, which is basically kind of the latest release, the bleeding edge, as I call it. Basically, it might have bugs. It's not a full stable release, but So far it's been working pretty good for me. So what you'll notice is in this folder, there are a few different folders as well as a bunch of different files. So let's walk through them real quick. So the first file that I'm going to show you is the Angular CLI Json. Now, this is actually what's being used by the ng executable application itself to be able to know about what's the actual name of the project. It knows some of the paths to the different folders and files that exist. It knows things like the environments that you can actually compile this for. So, for example, if you want to be able to do a development build, it knows to use the environment.ts inside of the environments folder. For production, it will actually use the environment.prod.ts file. And there's a couple of other things. So the end-to-end testing, there's a framework that's actually being used called Protractor, and it points to the config file of that, as well as the Karma testing framework for JavaScript applications. So all of that information is defined in this file. So if you need to be able to change that configuration for the ng CLI tool to be able to know about it, this is the file where you go and make those changes. The get-to-know file is something that's used to omit checking in code and files that shouldn't actually live in your source control repository. So this is also initialized as a Git repository where you can version control things. So this defines basic things like excluding certain files. So for example, in this case, everything in .vscode folder is going to be excluded, with the exception of these files here. And there's a few other things that are defined in this file. The Karma config file is a configuration file used by the application or the testing framework to know that the testing framework that it is going to be launching is Jasmine. There is also definition for things like using the Chrome launcher to actually start up the browser to do some automation of tests. And a few other needed and required settings that are going to be used by your testing framework. The package JSON file is actually a file that's very important for Node itself, because this is how it knows that your application is a specific version, the license that you want to use for that, as well as a couple of other things that are relevant to be able to run your application. So for example, under the scripts tag here, the ng variable basically tells you that it's going to just run the Angular CLI tool. The start is actually going to say ng serve, which is actually going to start up the web server and make your application available on the local machine. The build allows you to perform a build operation. Test does the testing. Lint actually allows you to compress and package all of your files for deployment. End-to-end actually executes the Protractor tool and executes all of your tests. The dependencies section actually lists out all of the required dependencies for your application. So if you want to be able to rely or bring in and use other modules from NPM or Node Package Manager, this is where you define them. Now, what's important to know is there's also a dev dependencies, which is actually starting out very similar to the dependencies section. However, it has a few more things listed in here, and those are things that are not required for your application to run, but they are required in order for you to be able to do development work. So, for example, if you see that there's TypeScript defined in here, but it's not defined up above, the reason for that is because you use TypeScript to actually what's called transpile, which is basically taking your .ts files and turning them into JavaScript files. Now, once your application is actually built and ready to be deployed to production, the only thing you actually are going to be using from a browser perspective is just the .js files that have been transpiled into an actual application package. You no longer actually need TypeScript. And the same goes for other things like TSLint. There's a bunch of Jasmine and Karma libraries that are actually not required for your application to run. So the next file is Protractor Config, and this is where it actually defines the different reporting libraries that it's actually going to be using. It sets up some default settings, as well as points to the actual what's called specs. And these are files that contain the test script logic to be able to run against your application to validate that everything is working correctly. This is actually very important if you start moving towards the DevOps model and Agile model, where you want to be able to build your applications quickly and iterate over them quickly, because you want to automate your tests as much as possible. And this is how you would do it. You would actually create different spec files that automate the testing activities of your application. So these are some of the settings that are available for Protractor to use. The README file actually contains some helpful commands that you can run in order to be able to, for example, build your application, be able to start up your development server, and things like that. The tsconfig JSON file contains very important information for the Angular application itself, and also tells Node and Angular things like if you want to be able to use source mapping. This is helpful for having your application be actually readable by the browser when you're actually debugging your application potentially in production. So source map files are very handy in that area. There is module resolution and how Node actually will be able to resolve the different modules that are going to be used by your application. Things like the target. So this is the version of JavaScript that you can use, and there's different versions that are available. So if you hover over this, it'll actually show you the different options that are available. And there's things around libraries you want to be able to use and things like that. So the tslint file also defines similar settings, but specifically to tslint, things about being able to use different type of commenting format if you have curly braces, end of line functionality, and different things that it would be able to use to actually compress and change your files once you actually start building them for production use. Now this actually optimizes your code significantly, so that your application ends up being smaller with less files to load all at the same time, and actually protects your source code and your IP a little bit as well. So this is a lot of information, a lot of different tweaking you can do, but I'm going to go ahead and leave that as they are right now. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and the next thing I want to show you is the source folder. This is actually the most important folder in this structure here, and this is where your actual application lives. So if you take a look, there is the app folder, which actually contains some of the component files. There's also the assets folder, which will contain different images and different things that are really required for your application to run. The environments file, as if you remember a few seconds ago, I talked about the environments TS and the environment prod TS. This is where those environment specific settings can go and can be leveraged by your application. The index.html is the actual starting point of your application, and I'll go ahead and change this to .io, since that's going to be my website name and title. And in here, the important thing to know about is this app-root. This is how Angular will know which particular component to actually load, and that component is inside of the app folder. And you'll notice that app-root doesn't actually exist, but if you know anything about AngularJS, you'll know that this is actually what used to be called a directive, but now they changed that to be a component, which components are basically directives. And then if you look into the app component, you'll notice that the selector for that component is actually called app-root. This is how it actually knows when the application starts up to load this component. It knows to use this HTML and CSS to actually load for that part of your application, and it will actually display that information on the screen. So I'll go ahead and actually save this since I made a change to the title here. And let's go ahead and close this and go to the next file. So the next file is the main TS. This is kind of the main entry point to your application. So It imports a few different modules and components that are required to start. So for example, enable prod mode. This is core functionality of AngularJS. It allows you to do the check-in to see if the environment is production, and if it is, it will actually disable some of the debugging functionality that you're not going to be using in production. And then the next or the last step in this process is actually telling the AngularJS application to go ahead and start up the app module. And you'll notice that the app module is actually being imported right here, and it's located in this file. Now, if you look at this file in the app folder, you'll notice that we load a few more modules, including the actual app component, which I showed you before, which contains the main entry of your HTML page that actually loads up on the screen. And then there's a few different things that are important. So this is what they call an entry module, or your application module. This is how Angular actually knows where to even start. Now, your application can actually consist of multiple components. So let's say you have your main web application, but then you want to create an admin section. What you would do is you would actually want to create a admin module to isolate all of the admin type functionality into a separate module. This way, a lot of people are not going to actually be needing to load that, since only the administrators of your website will ever only be able to log into the admin section. But we'll cover that in future videos on how to actually do that. So the next file that I'm going to show you is going to be the style CSS. This file is actually the global CSS file that's going to be used by your application. Now, if you notice before, the app component CSS file was also created. And this is something that is a good practice where you actually create different components. You would want to isolate the actual CSS to those components only. Now, if you have the general look and feel for your application, so you use specific colors and you want to have specific styling across your entire application, you can go ahead and actually put that into the styles.css that is global to your application. But keep in mind that if you do that, it's going to actually be overwritten if your components will define their own styles for that. So it's important to name your things correctly and put the appropriate CSS selectors and classes in the right places. So the next item we're going to look at is the test.ts. And this is where is this actually defining configuration for your Karma testing framework to know basically how to perform different tests. This is something that you probably don't need to be ever looking at and modifying, because this will pick up on all the different tests that exist within your project and automatically start actually executing them as long as you follow the proper naming conventions. The tsconfig.app.json, if you notice, it actually has the first line that says extends and then points to a particular file. We actually looked at that file before. It's in the main folder for the Cloud Developer web application itself. And what this does is it says use all those settings, and on top of it add all these other settings for the application itself. So in here it defines the compilation options, so the output directory, the different module resolution methodology that it wants to use. So in this case it's going to be using ES 2015, the base URL, the different types, and the different files that it would actually exclude as part of your application process. So the tsconfig specs JSON file actually defines all the different test files that are going to be actually found or discovered and used. And then the typings is something that's actually used to help perform IntelliSense type of functionality in your editor. So this is kind of the high level overview of the structure of your AngularJS application. In the future video, what I'm going to show you quick is how do you actually start this up, and how do you begin to make changes to be able to start using this AngularJS application to start building your application itself. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave your feedback in the comment section below. And in future videos, we're going to be talking about the next steps of building out this website. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.